I do remember the day when I came into one of the social events and I came to you and I said, come on, I need some work. I'm the new boy here. And you asked me what aircraft I have, and I said, quite proud of myself, 2 Piper Senecas. You looked at me and said, I will call you.
Well, I think we did.
So welcome to another episode of A View from the Top. And this week we'll discuss aircraft charter. I've got two experts from the industry, Emily Williams and Neil Harvey.
We advise clients on their overall kind of flying strategy and then execute that on a day-to-day basis, which means that we work with the fractional providers, the large fleets, the individual ad hoc charter, and we buy aircraft for some of our clients and go on to manage them. I enjoy working with the clients that we get to work with and also the fantastic people within it. Everything from engineers and operators like yourself, people who really understand the technical side of the aircraft, to the fun stuff where you organise amazing trips to wonderful places in the world and great challenges that it provides.
Brilliant. And you, Neil, you've been in the industry longer than me. That makes me feel young. If I was to take one thing that I need to know when I come to charter an aircraft, what would you say the most important thing is?
Yeah. You need to find a good broker, someone trusted, maybe you've been referred to. There's a lot of great associations you can check, like the Air Charter Association, to see who the members are. And when you speak to that broker, you want to form a relationship with them. You know, this is your most precious cargo, your family, your business associates. You can ask lots of questions, ask for lots of images of the aircraft, understand if the size and the capabilities are right for your mission. You want to ask for their air operating certificate to make sure that they're safe and they're, adhering to the very high standards and rules of our industry. But the more information you have before you make a decision, sign your contract and pay your money, I think the better chance you have of having a really good experience.
Yeah, brilliant. But you mentioned a broker. Can you explain to us what is the job of a broker? Because I'm an operator.
The expert there.
And I have to say the majority of our work, probably 80 or more % of our work is through brokers. So can you explain me what does the broker offer to a client?
I think the broker offers, total online challenges, a lot of easy information. The broker has to bring some value, and I think in the modern, the modern times, the broker brings that value by explaining exactly the right kind of aeroplane you need for your job. There's a lot of routes which, if you go direct to an operator, sometimes if you go direct to somebody with a vested interest, they'll give you a nice aeroplane for the trip, but you might take a 12-hour range trip on a 45-minute flight. And I think the broker's able to determine your price range. It can determine whether you want to look at turboprops or you want to look at jets, and it can pick out the best aeroplane for you.
Are they good and bad brokers?
Most brokers are strong. There's an association, the Air Charter Association, many broker members. That's a list you could use to check. But I think most brokers are strong, and the larger brokers are well-known brokers and known throughout the market.
So, aircraft types. If I'm a novice charterer and I'm looking at the market and I have a trip, say, from London to Nice, what do I charter?
I think, you ask the right questions. You've got a route. First question will be, how many passengers do you have? So there's, on that route, there's probably 2 or 3 different sizes of aircraft you would normally take. There's an entry-level aircraft, 4 to 6 seats. There's a mid-size aircraft, 6 to 8 seats. And there's probably a larger cabin aircraft, 8 to 10 seats. Baggage is another question. So, if you've got a lot of baggage, maybe the smaller aircraft doesn't suit the baggage capacity. Medium-sized baggage, you can take any aircraft. If you've got a lot of baggage or you're taking equipment for a boat or whatever, then you might want to take a large cabin aircraft. So
can we categorize those aircraft types?
Yeah. So very light jet, as Neil said, that will seat about 4 passengers, will be knee to knee. We're unlikely to be able to stand up, and the lavatory's probably got a curtain as opposed to a fixed door.
So we're talking something like a Citation Mustang.
Correct. And you're probably looking up to 2 hours of flying, around Europe. Then you've got the light and super lights. So maybe like a Phenom 300, a Citation XL or an XLS, up to 7 passengers. And you're looking to fly a little bit further, maybe 3.5 hours at a push. Remembering that the range may change depending on how much weight you've got on board, so how many passengers and how much baggage. Then you're going to go into your mid-size aircraft, so maybe a Hawker 800, for example, 8 seats, usually up to 8 seats, and again a little bit further range. So if you're flying out of the UK, you might get down to Marrakesh, sort of 4.5 hours. Then you're moving into your large cabins, up to 10 passengers, plenty of baggage space, and you might even be lucky enough to have a flight attendant on board. Again, a little bit longer range. Some of those might just make it to New York on a good day with the correct winds and depending on the number of passengers. And then you're going into your long range. So some of those aircraft will do one stop to Australia. They'll certainly make it to LA. You're looking at maybe 14 passengers on board, a bed area, potentially 2 lavatories fully enclosed with doors, and at least 1 flight attendant on board. I think, as Neil said, you've got to ask the right questions, and working with a good broker or a good advisor will absolutely help you narrow that down. But a couple of things to bear in mind: the number of passengers, the amount of baggage you have. Did you want a flight attendant on board? Is this a special flight where you might want a full meal served, or a long range flight where you're going to need at least 1 good meal? Are you going to want hot catering or cold catering? And then finally, some of the sort of outlying things, or maybe special things you might want. Are you traveling with pets? Are you going to be having your dogs? Do you want them loose in the cabin? Are they going to be in a crate? We have a regular flyer who's a budgie that comes in his cage, and he occasionally brings his lovebird mate with him. So finding an operator that will allow that. Some aircraft owners understandably do not want their pets on board. Are you a smoker? Are you a vapor? You know, is that something you'd like? Do you have special needs to get in and out of the aircraft? Can you walk up 8 steps? Or do you need an aircraft that can take an ambilift that can come straight up to the plane so you can walk on a flat surface? So there's a lot of little sort of small questions that might be the kind of icing on the cake to ensure that you get the aircraft that makes it the most kind of pleasurable and easy experience for you.
In our industry, in the charter industry, we have different business models. And I think your business model is quite, maybe not unique, but different to more traditional models. Can you tell us a bit about it? What you offer to the end user?
Unlike a broker who might work on a flight-by-flight basis, although they would have sort of long-term relationships with some really good clients, we work on an annual basis with our clients. So we are private aviation advisors. Our clients come to us and they tend to be flying 40 hours or more per year and feel like they have a sort of 3-year plus view of their flying. We do initial analysis on all their types of flying, the types of missions they do, the people they travel with, the ranges they need to meet, and we take a totally independent view of that. So we put together some analysis and help them take a multi-portfolio approach to their flying. Some of that may be ad hoc charter, where we'll act like a broker into the marketplace, but we'll do it with 0% commission because we're retained on an annual basis. Some of that might be a block hours program, so we fix their flying. So in a block hours, you might buy 10, 20 hours of flying at a fixed price, and then it's up to the block hours provider to go and find those aircraft in the market for you. So it's a nice insurance policy, if you will, or for those clients who like to have, don't want to be negotiating on every trip. And then some clients who are flying on a more regular basis might go into one of these big fractional providers. These are multi-year commitments where you take 50 plus hours on an annual basis over 3+ years. Some of those might be NetJets or VistaJet or JetFly, where they operate a whole fleet of aircraft. And then the kind of next level is if you want to go and buy your own aircraft. Maybe that you're flying 300-400 hours a year. You have certain concerns or focus on safety and security, and buying your own aircraft might be an option for you. And in those cases, we go out to the market, we look for what's available, and we look for great operators like yourself, George, to run those aircraft for their clients. And then it kind of comes neatly back to Hunt and Palmer, who might broker those aircraft on single trips for their charter clients as well.
How do you choose an operator, Neil? I mean, you have a client, has a certain requirement. I guess the first criteria is who has the right aircraft for the job. But then how do you choose the operator? How do you advise the client who should be going? Because sometimes price might be, or it shouldn't be, the main driver.
I think you start at the basis that the operator has to be licensed correctly. So, it has an AOC from the Civil Aviation Authority. It has a reputation, it has some experience over a number of years. When it comes to each individual trip, I think a good broker will know, he will know which kind of trips suit which kind of operators. Some trips are short, some trips are over 4 or 5 days where they might want to change the route, they might want to leave the aircraft for a day with all the baggage on board. So some operators will sit with you for that trip. Others will look to do 3 trips a day, and they'll take the aeroplane away and they'll move it around, which is it's a worthwhile business policy. But from some clients' point of view, they want ultimate flexibility, so they'll want an aeroplane to stay with them. So I think that's just a point of the market where you get to know which operator suits which type of flying, and although we're calling it charter, there is a big variety of different requirements.
As I say, I think a really important part is to look at what the client's objectives are for that particular flight. It may be that they're flying to a remote airport, and it might be that your sort of partner's job to decide, does that operator have experience going into that airport?
Of course.
It may be that you need backup. Crucial business deal is happening. If that aircraft goes tech, which can happen, these are incredibly sophisticated pieces of machinery, you might want an operator that has several aircraft in their fleet, maybe some based nearby, that they could recover that flight if needed. You might want to fly one way on a small aircraft because there's 2 of you going outbound and 8 of you coming back, so you might want to pick a different aircraft. And obviously if you go to the same operator, you get some sort of scale and you get one point of contact as well. So I think from our point of view at IWA, we often look at what the client's objective is. Is it the most cost effective? Is it, backup? Is it experience? And we match the operator, as Neil says, to that client for that particular trip.
Well, I'm pleased you mentioned backup, because I've been in the industry for over 25 years now, and certain things are not black and white. So from a broker's, because you are our client and you represent your own client, when an aircraft goes tech, which it does happen, unfortunately, from time to time, what's your expectations?
I think they've changed over the past 5 years. Some time ago, 5 years ago and more, a lot of operators would help you a lot more with the support and if they've got an aircraft that had a technical issue, can't continue with the flight, or a couple of days before there's an issue and it can't start the flight, then I think there was a lot more support maybe 5-10 years ago. In the current market, I think demand is really, really high, and I think that we've probably come to accept that in many, many cases, you'll be left on your own, and it's a return of you get a full 100% refund, and look for something else for your client, and that's proved difficult. There are some exceptions. Your company is an exception. I think you'd always look to back us up. But I think you have to accept that. I think we found over the last 2-3 years, the demand has been intense for business aviation after COVID. And I think some of that support that the operators showed the brokers has faded away a little bit. Maybe they feel they've not been able to provide it. We've had a long period where there's been, COVID's still affected pilots. There's been supply problems with spare parts. There's been, training issues waiting to get pilots trained. There's a backlog of all the infrastructure.
Certainly a challenge when you have a tech aircraft. Yeah. It's a great challenge from the operator's point to provide the backup. But you mentioned that the industry, we all know we got a lot busier, things were hectic during 2022. So we're saying that the service has degraded?
So I think it's interesting. If you look at kind of the last 10 years, I think that some of the larger fleets could claim to have the highest levels of service in the industry. But I genuinely feel that operators and ad hoc charter, those fleets have really risen to the challenge, and in many cases go above and beyond those large fleets now in terms of delivering really good service to the client. If you imagine on every trip there are several people with a very keen interest in that trip happening well, and several businesses that are surviving off the back of that trip. So you've got the aircraft owner, you've got the operator, you've got the broker or partner or advisor to that client, and the lead passenger or client who is commissioning the trip. So everyone wants it to go smoothly and be profitable. And all it takes is one link of that chain to step out and the whole thing falls apart. In my opinion, and at IWA, I think we're really working with operators who are climbing back up that ladder in terms of service, whether it be backup, whether it's simply being communication, keeping us posted on every aspect of the trip, going that extra mile, arranging the car, checking if the airport will open 15 minutes later because the flight's been delayed. I think those things are kind of crucial to maintain the standards in our industry, but also restore faith of some passengers who have been just had not the kind of best experiences due to the high level of demand there has been over the last 12 to 18 months.
I think that's a good place though, where a broker has really earns its keep, because over certainly the last 3 or 4 years we've been in many situations where there's been problems, there's been hassles, there's been things sometimes way out of people's control, and I think that a broker will, at Hunts and Palmer, we've always looked to support the client as best we can, and that means that if you're let down, if there's issues last minute, we've got a night duty, we've got 8-10 people in the office working on that problem at any particular time. So it's a good, to have a support of a broker over the past few years has paid dividends, I think.
What about the future? Challenges?
I think going forward, one of our questions is the perception of business aviation. It's going to be a challenge for us. We're part of the main transport provision for business. We're alongside scheduled services, giving options that people wish to use. But I think we need to work on that. As an industry, I think we do a lot. I think we work on a lot of, we're starting to look at sustainable aviation fuel to run some of the aeroplanes. We're starting to look at more efficient engines. And I think we can work, within our parameters. We've got to do as much as we can to convince people that we're part of the overall transport plan.
Do you get many clients asking for sustainable fuel?
I think most businesses these days and most private aviation flyers look to offset, which is probably the easiest and quickest method at the moment. And I can't think of a flight that we've certainly done in years where there's not some sort of offset in place. I think the aircraft manufacturers are really driving the change to sustainable fuels and more efficient aircraft. We've done a lot of work with Dassault and Bombardier over the past couple of years purchasing aircraft. They're taking a 5 and a 10-year view, right? Because they're not going to be able to sell aircraft once the regulations come in, of which we're a highly regulated industry. And we've discussed this before. It's inevitable that they're going to arise. So I think the manufacturers are working hard on this, and it won't be long before we see a more sustainable looking aviation industry. But I think we have to be careful in the short term. You only have to look to the US and see, there are several people who are tracking every aviation flight. You'll see Bernard Arnault has just sold his aircraft based on the tracking and the sort of sustainability pressure. Some of the large pharmaceutical companies have decided to sell up their fleets as well. I think we'd be kidding ourselves to think that they are no longer flying privately. I think they're probably going to less trackable methods and moving into some of these larger fractional providers. So I think it's a really important balance. Clearly there has to be a strong focus on sustainability, but we have to do that without vilifying an industry as a whole in the short term too.
And I think also we have to do that when we're able to do it. At the moment, I think there's 2 major refineries being built at the present time for sustainable aviation fuel, which will give much more supply. And until that's there, it's not in the news. Sustainable aviation fuel isn't really in the main news. So I think it's for our industry that when we have the ability to use more and more of that fuel, then we offer that to our customers. And I think you'll find then that a lot more customers ask for it. As Emily said earlier, we do a lot of offsetting where major corporations ask us at the end of the year what their fuel burn's been, what their carbon dioxide output has been. And we're able to do that quite well and quite accurately as a way to do it.
You have to look at the kind of car industry. Do you remember when you used to look at a Tesla on the road and be like, wow, that's a Tesla? Yeah. Now, they're 1 in every 3 or 4 cars. So I think it's inevitable that aviation, both commercial and private business aviation, will follow suit in short shrift.
But I think a good point there is that there used to be a Tesla on the road, was a full automatic car. Now there's lots of options. There's hybrid cars. Yeah. There's different types of solution. Absolutely. And I think aviation, we're looking at electric aeroplanes. Well, they're a long way off, so we're going to have a halfway house, similar to the road cars, where there may be some sort of hybrid or there's some sort of sharing of information and technology.
Well, it's been a very interesting conversation. Thank you both for joining us. And if anyone would like to know any more about your services,
visit our website, www.iwaviation.com. And thanks so much for having us, George. It's been lots of fun.
A pleasure.
Yeah, thank you, George. And if you need to contact Hunt and Palmer, please do. It's www.huntandpalmer.com.
Thank you.
Thank you.